Welcome to Our Hen House. This is Jasmine Singer.
And this is Marianne Sullivan.
And this week we will both be speaking with author and professor Dr. Kendra Coulter about, among other things, her latest book, Defending Animals, Finding Hope on the Front Lines of Animal Protection. This was actually one of our live Flock Friday events where the flock is invited to watch us do an interview live. And so that might be one of the reasons.
And then contribute questions as well.
Right. And the Q&A afterwards is our bonus content. The Q&A was with the flock. So if you're in the flock and you don't know about this yet, then drop us a line. info@ourhenhouse.org is the easiest way to do that. And if this is exciting to you, then maybe you consider joining the flock if you're able to. We do these once a month, and Kendra did not disappoint. This is a
she's great.
Cool, talented, passionate human being. And although we were discussing her latest book, she has another book that she is currently, it's to come. It is fiction. And I am so excited about it. We do talk about it a little bit on the interview, but we'll definitely have her back when that comes out because wow. But she has big news. I mean, I don't want to spoil the interview, but there's some really exciting stuff happening in her world. And I think you'll be very interested if you're tuning in right now. I think you'll love it.
Her book is it's extremely well written. It's written for a general audience. It's not the easiest thing to read because a lot of it is really tough, but the stories are so powerful. And a lot of it is about just, animal people who are working on the front lines. There's a lot of dog and cat stuff, but just the heroics of these people and they're just holding the whole thing together with their devotion. It's just really an inspiration.
Yeah, totally. I think an inspiration is exactly the right way of describing the book and Kendra as well. So before we get to that, just a few things we wanted to touch on. I did host Environmental Connections since last we spoke, which is my show over at WXXI, the NPR station here in Rochester. In addition to Weekend Edition, I have this new show there, Environmental Connections. It airs live on the radio on the last Friday of the month. There's 2 episodes back to back, and it's being shot for TV as well. So that is forthcoming probably in April. I will keep you posted about that. But it was, it's always so interesting. We had one of the episodes was about whether or not to have kids in the face of climate change. And for people who do have kids, like how to lessen their environmental impact or their environmental footprint, I should say, not impact. That was a funny Freudian slip. Carter Dillard was one of my guests for that. He's, of course, an animal law person and he's a vegan. And so even when we're not like explicitly talking about veganism and I'm interviewing a vegan, I love it because I know that all of their perspectives are like rooted in a vegan ethic. Does that change the way you go about things? Like if you're doing something like relating to, let's say, law as it relates to, let's say, companion animals, and the person is vegan, are you like secretly super excited? Yeah.
Well, I don't, I'm not the kind of person who gets super excited, so I'm not sure that's the right way to, but of course, it's not just in work stuff. It's like if I hear that like a novelist has written a book. This is not, there's never a novelist, but like if there's a book about politics or something that's doesn't have anything to do with animals, but I happen to hear that the writer is vegan, it just changes my perspective. I just think they know how to think. Right. I just think people who aren't vegan don't know how to think. Well, unless they're like psychopaths and they just really don't care.
Oh my God, Marianne. Okay, what? That's fine. It's our fucking podcast. You could say whatever
Why not?
you want.
Well, they don't. They care about animals and yet they go around eating them. It doesn't make any sense at all.
I do love you, by the way. I do. And all of our listeners love you too. You're bold. I appreciate that.
I was not trying to be bold. I was really just saying what makes sense to me. So I always trust anybody. It's not like you can trust all vegans, but there's something about anybody who's not vegan that there's a hole in their thinking that, I just don't know how to fill. And so, it makes me suspect of other things.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Well, by the way, so my other episode was about rain, which you found very interesting. I found it a little dry. Get it?
I did think it was interesting.
It was very informative for sure.
Every every geographical area has its particular fears and things that are kind of starting to be problems vis-a-vis climate. And yours is a local show, and our problem here, it has a lot to do with rain. We're getting a lot of it.
Right. Yeah. But so I'm planning the March episodes, and I do think I'm going to do a show about food finally. I was trying
to... You keep saying
No, I don't.
That.
I wanted it to be...
Yet.
That's not true. I always wanted it to be the March show because I wanted to like inch in without people thinking that, oh, she's pushing her agenda.
Here's the vegan.
Right, exactly. But anyway, I was also a guest on Connections last week, the talk show that Environmental Connections is a spinoff of, because it was just about this documentary regarding representation in media. And so I was a guest on it because it was about like LGBTQ and BIPOC representation in media, like in stories, in the newsrooms. And the reason I'm bringing this up on our hen house is because I used a vegan example. And it's funny because I was also just legit wanting to talk about veganism and I was trying to sneak it in. But the vegan example I gave is that I've been vegan for 20 years. And whenever I pitch a story that I think is worthy of covering, if it's about animals, I have to jump through hoops in order to prove that it's worthwhile.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we all go through that. But of course, you're in a particularly... you're really out there in the real world, but they just think we have this insane bias in favor of animals. Like, what does that even mean?
And I was making...
we're getting payoffs.
I was making... Yeah, the chickens aren't paying you. And I was making the kind of comparison to like, as a lesbian, I also have that when I pitch LGBTQ stories, that I have to kind of make the point that it's not about me, it's a worthy story. And I think it's a really good, parallel. And I was glad to be able to bring it up because I also said, animal rights are very important to me. It's like...
Yeah, no, it's always nice to be able to slip it in.
Yeah.
As they say, how do you know somebody's vegan? They'll tell you.
I actually think the opposite is true. I think that when you go into a room, it's not the vegan telling you that they're vegan. It's the meat eater who's telling the vegan that they're a meat eater.
That's really true.
It happens to me really constantly.
True.
Constantly.
Also, they don't know, like maybe a vegan tells them that they're vegan, but if a vegan doesn't tell them that they're vegan, they don't know. They don't know that they were the exception. That
right.
There might be a million people who are vegan who never mentioned it, and they have no way of knowing that. It's so annoying, and they all think it's a new joke because they're not vegan, so they don't hear the joke all the time. So they think they came up with it or something.
It's like 10 years ago when the bacon was a big deal, and like everyone thought it was hilarious, and like the 5 billionth person who said it was still cracking up, and I was like, oh, that's really clever. Super clever. By the way, I was following a few of the people who were in the documentary that I was just referring to, and just because I also moderated a panel this past week after a screening.
A busy child.
I know, I'm a busy child. I'm just a childish busy.
That didn't work.
Didn't work at all. Okay, let me move on really fast. Thanks for pointing that out. Anyway, so I was following the subjects of the documentary on Instagram, and like I clicked on the Instagram story, and one of them was eating the new plant-based Reese's. And I've heard of it, I think, because I think Veg News wrote something about it.
Yeah,
but
it sounds
I was like
familiar. I try to not know those things.
I was so excited.
I don't eat chocolate.
Because this had nothing to do with veganism. And I was so excited that this person was vegan. It just like always makes me so friggin' happy. It really does.
We have to take our little joys.
And by the way, I was at a retreat today at WXXI. They got me like a vegan sandwich, and they got like the other person who's a vegetarian the vegan sandwich, and everyone else ate the meat sandwich. But someone was like, oh, I baked cookies. And this one guy in the back yells, are they vegan? But he was doing it for me. And then the person who made them was like, no, sorry, Jasmine. And it was like kind of an interesting moment because I wasn't the one who had to ask. And like, it was too bad.
You're like really, really looking for small victories.
I know. Well, that's what I have.
This sounds like something that would have happened in 1990.
It probably is. Sometimes I'm living in 1990. Sometimes it's my physical style. Remember in 1990, those shirts that were buttoned down and they had the shoulders cut out, but everything else was a button down?
I was too old for them in 1990.
I wore them all the time in 1990.
I was 40 in 1990. It would have been a bad look. I do remember them well, though. It was such a look.
I was like 12 or something. I don't know. All right. So what else do we have to talk about? This New York Times article that you found, this was very moving and very...
I mean, I didn't really find... I heard about this everywhere. It was all over the place.
Yeah, I've heard about it.
Flacco has been all over the place for a while. He was really, really famous. And he's, of course, probably a lot of you have heard of him. He's the owl. What kind of owl was he? A Eurasian eagle owl. And he had escaped from the zoo, the Central Park Zoo. Why Central Park still has a zoo totally escapes my ability to understand. But it does. And he had escaped, and he's been living in the park for a year. And of course, recently, probably a lot of you have heard of this, but he died. It was not through the actions of anyone. I don't think he hit a building and didn't survive. And of course, Manhattan is probably a pretty crowded place for anybody to be flying around in. But he was a hero to so many people. I mean, people love this bird. I mean, for one thing, it's just like unbelievably gorgeous. And people were very excited about him. People were very inspired about him. People really, really cared. And I love that. I am not like criticizing that at all. But it is one of those situations that brings to mind like how much people love animals and how much they just don't extend it really beyond this tiny, tiny little circle of animals who have some kind of meaning for them. I don't know. So this is a sad story, of course. In some ways, it's an inspiring story because of the deep, deep affection that so many New Yorkers had for this bird. And it's also just a very frustrating story that it so often doesn't go further than that. But it does give you hope. It does give you hope that people do have that connection.
Well, yeah. So I read the article, the one in the New York Times, even though I had kind of been hearing about this as well. And of course, as you mentioned, it was someone who originally sort of like broke the mesh thing that was keeping this owl caged.
Yeah, no, he was deliberately released
from
the zoo, like in an act of vandalism.
Right. And, and then he was sort of like allowed to live out his life. But a bunch of the people, including those who cared very deeply about him, were very concerned that even though a lot of people agreed with the fact that he shouldn't have been contained, they felt like this was bound to happen sooner or later. And by the way, I want to also say that when I was looking at this article, the first photo after the photo of the owl was someone putting flowers down in tribute to the owl. And the person has on a fur coat, which looks to me to be real. I mean, of course, I don't know, but it sure looks real.
Yeah.
And it's like amazing to me that that's the photo. Like I'm shocked and I'm not shocked, how it goes.
Yeah. Like, why did they pick that photo? There's just such a complete blindness.
Yeah, I know. But back to what I was saying about how like a lot of people who did really care also kind of felt like this was not going to end well. And so that kind of relates to another story, which was in the In Defense of Animals newsletter for January, which highlights like a successful effort led by activists and In Defense of Animals to relocate animals from a New Jersey petting zoo to sanctuaries, which is really highlighting the terrible conditions that the animals faced and the advocacy work of a young activist, Suraj Gandhi. And I mean, the persistent advocacy led to these animals being relocated, which when does that happen?
Yeah, it's just really extraordinary that this young guy, he devoted himself to this issue and he managed to get them out and he managed to find a place to take them. Of course, this couldn't have been done with Central Park Zoo. They never would have let somebody take... I guess it's you who really highlighted to me that probably this person who vandalized Flacco's cage probably was trying to do the right thing. I mean, who knows? Maybe they were just an asshole, but the Central Park Zoo is not a great place. And, though it isn't like there's visible suffering, it's not a place where animals should be kept. It's small. And he probably was in a condition that bothered somebody. And yet saving animals is so much harder than that. Though, Flacco did have a year of freedom, but he was in danger the whole time. And these animals, wow, like I'm just so impressed by this. It just shows you when, like, he really cared about the animals in this petting zoo. He had gone there as a child. It meant a lot to him. He just loved these animals. As he grew older, he realized that it was not a great place. And he set out on his own to either get the conditions improved or to get the animals out. And somehow he actually managed to do it. He got them relocated to sanctuaries. He got the help of In Defense of Animals. Like, it's just amazing. He had to go to county commissioner meetings. He had all this evidence. I just love this guy.
Yeah, I do too. I love that story so much. And it's interesting to me that these two stories are the stories we're talking about today, because it could have been a different ending for Flacco. It really could have. But
I don't think it could have been. I really don't. There's no way you would have gotten an animal out of the Central Park Zoo with activism. Which is just like shows you have to pick your battles. You have to find the battles you can win. It's part of activism. There's a lot of animals that you can't save. And I don't even know whether this person was trying to save Flacco or really understood the dangers that Flacco would be in, once he was released. But yeah, he did an amazing job. And the entire city fell in love with him.
Yeah, they really did. I'm not sure if it was you I was mentioning this to, but there is something right now, like a lot of publishers at publishing houses are looking for the story of the one animal. And my understanding is that they were kind of, I want to say, like riding the coattails of the octopus teacher, that really took off. And so people loved this octopus. And so it kind of goes with that. Like, and also Kendra's book, her novel, the one that's not out yet, is about a turtle. And then this story is about an owl. And so it's that one animal.
This isn't fiction, but it is.
Right.
It did get an enormous amount of press. Yeah.
Right. It highlights and of course the octopus teacher wasn't fiction either. Like it highlights the importance of sanctuary work too. And so, yeah, it's fascinating stuff. By the way, before we get to the interview with Kendra, on episode 724 of Our Hen House, God, we've done a lot of friggin' episodes.
Yeah, I know. The numbers are becoming stupid.
They're really dumb. They're so dumb. You interviewed Kip Anderson and Cam Waters on episode 724 because they made the film Christspiracy. And I know that this is a film you talk about a lot. Like, this is a concept you talk about a lot. Well, big news, Christspiracy is going to be screened in...
Well, I just wanted to mention, I felt really bad doing the interview because very, very rarely do we do an interview about a movie at a point where people can't see it yet. But there were special reasons we wanted to with this particular situation. So I'm really, really glad